On November 6, 2012, just after dawn, a woman's body was found along a busy road in Quezon City. Commuters making their way down 18th Avenue were the first to notice her. Barefoot, dressed only in a white shirt and blue leggings, lying motionless near the curb. There was no wallet, no phone, nothing to tell investigators who she was. But her face told a different story. Her eyes were still open, frozen in what looked like absolute fear. Police arrived within minutes and sealed off the area. A medical examiner was called to the scene, and it didn't take long to confirm what officers already suspected. This wasn't an accident. The young woman had been shot 5 times in the head. Her body showed signs of a violent struggle, bruises, cuts, discoloration across her skin. The injuries around her lower body were severe enough that investigators immediately considered sexual assault. She had nothing on her except a crumpled McDonald's bag clutched in one hand. A receipt from the same restaurant was found nearby. As the investigation began, neighbors started coming forward. Several people said they heard gunshots around 5 in the morning. Others remembered seeing a dark SUV speeding away from the area. One witness said the shots seemed to come from inside the vehicle, fired downward at someone already on the ground. 2 other witnesses managed to remember part of the license plate, a small detail that would soon become essential. The crime scene quickly became chaotic. Police tried to preserve evidence, but the location drew crowds, reporters, bystanders, people filming on their phones. Investigators were left with more questions than answers. Who was this woman? How did she end up here? And who would do something this brutal? The night before, on November 5th, a 20-year-old woman named Julianne left her family's home in Las Piñas. She lived there with her mother and younger brothers. Her father wasn't in the picture, never had been. Julianne often stayed out late, sometimes for modeling gigs, sometimes with friends, so her absence that evening didn't immediately worry anyone. Before leaving, she told her mother not to wait up. She was meeting a close friend that night, Althea Altarano. The two had been arguing recently, but Althea reached out with what seemed like an olive branch. She mentioned a possible modeling opportunity, a chance to meet a client. Julianne saw it as a way to move past their disagreement. She got dressed carefully, fixed her makeup, and left around 6 in the evening to meet Althea at SM Mall of Asia, a major shopping center in Pasay. The evening started normally. They watched a movie, talked, wandered through the mall. Nothing seemed unusual. Later, they took a cab to the World Trade Center, where Althea said the client meeting was supposed to happen. Around 10:30 at night, as they walked along Diosdado Macapagal Boulevard near the corner of Gil Payat Avenue, a dark SUV pulled up fast. 2 men jumped out, grabbed Julianne, and shoved her into the vehicle. It happened in seconds. Althea stood there. She didn't scream, didn't try to stop them. Julianne's purse and shoes were left on the sidewalk as the SUV tore off into the night. Althea stayed at the scene, holding Julianne's belongings, crying. Passing police officers noticed her and stopped. They took her to the nearest station, where she gave a confusing statement. She said Julianne had been taken by strangers she didn't recognize. She claimed it all happened too fast for her to see details, only that it was a large black SUV. She also said the men didn't try to take her. Around 12:40 in the morning, after finishing her statement, Althea texted her boyfriend to pick her up. He came with his father, and they drove her home to Cavite. She didn't ask for medical help. She didn't go back to the police station, and by the next day, she had stopped answering calls from investigators. When Julianne was officially reported missing, her family started searching. By then, Althea had gone silent. Relatives later said she was afraid for her safety, but detectives found her story full of holes. She never mentioned the planned meeting or the supposed modeling client. She also left out the identity of her boyfriend, who owned the vehicle believed to have been used in the abduction. Early on, Althea's version of events didn't provide any clear motive. Only as more facts surfaced did investigators begin to understand what really happened that night. Julianne Rhodes was born in July 1992 and grew up in Las Piñas, just south of Metro Manila. She came from a humble family with 6 children. Her mother, Luz, supported them by cooking and selling homemade meals. There was no father around. His identity was unknown, and he played no part in their lives. Money was always tight, but the family was close. From a young age, Julianne showed maturity and a sense of purpose. She enrolled at Arellano University to study hotel and restaurant management. Tuition wasn't cheap, and she had to pause her education multiple times to help cover costs. She took part-time jobs, and modeling became a practical way to earn income. It wasn't about fame, it was about survival. She got into the industry through a personal connection, which led to commercial work and eventually an appearance on Abe's CBN. Her professionalism and strong work ethic kept the jobs coming. She even appeared in photo shoots for well-known men's magazines, including FHM Philippines. While balancing school and work, Julianne was quietly building a future in a tough industry. Althea Altarano was a big part of that world. 3 years older and originally from Cavite, Althea had also broken into modeling and gained some recognition by 2012. She was featured in the September issue of Jam magazine as Girlfriend of the Month. People in the industry saw her as ambitious and energetic, though she kept certain parts of her life hidden. Althea was a mother of 2, a fact she rarely shared because it clashed with the image of a young single model. She and Julianne had known each other for years, and to outsiders, they seemed close. Julianne trusted her completely. But as Julianne's career started to take off and her popularity grew, something shifted. Althea began to see her not as a friend, but as competition. Rumors started circulating among other models that Althea had children. She believed Julianne was the one spreading the information, and she took it as betrayal. That moment changed everything. Quiet jealousy turned into resentment, then into something darker. Althea confided in her boyfriend. He was 32, owned a tattoo shop in Quezon City, and had no ties to the modeling world. But he had a reputation for being aggressive. During one argument, he had even pointed a weapon at Althea. She was scared, but she didn't leave. It was Jared who suggested they intimidate Julianne. Teach her a lesson about messing with the wrong person. The plan was supposed to be a scare tactic, nothing more. Althea didn't object. She had no detailed plan and didn't seem to grasp how quickly things could spiral. But what she did next was deliberate. She told Jared where Julianne would be. She guided her to the meeting spot, and she stayed silent as it all unfolded. Right after Julianne was taken, she was driven to a residential area in Quezon City called Salam Compound on Llano Street. It was a densely packed neighborhood, mostly home to Muslim families. She was brought to a house being used as a temporary hideout. Several men connected to Jared were already inside. No one was hiding. The entire operation had been coordinated, and everyone had a role. According to court records, a man named Efron was the first to isolate Julianne. He took her into a separate room. Soon after, others in the house heard her screaming, begging for help. One of the men, Jomar, later testified that he heard her cries but didn't intervene. That's when the violence escalated. Witnesses said Efron was the first to attack her and stayed alone with her for a long time. Evidence later confirmed that Julianne was physically and sexually assaulted. Later that night, another man arrived, someone called Aldous. The others described him as dangerous and unpredictable. He wasn't part of the original plan, and his presence wasn't expected. At the time, the house was occupied by Jomar, Bob, Abdul, and a few others. Aldous showed up armed with a torn .45 caliber handgun. He assessed the situation quickly, ignored any protests, and announced his intention to assault Julianne before taking care of her. No one tried to stop him. His arrival changed everything. Unlike the others, Aldous didn't treat this as intimidation. His actions made it clear. He had no intention of letting her leave alive. When Jared returned from a quick trip to McDonald's, the others told him what Aldous and Efron had done. Julianne was in shock, barely able to respond or speak. After looking at the situation, Jared made a decision. Witnesses later said he told them, "She needs to be dealt with." As he stepped outside, Aldous approached Julianne and told her she was going home. Trusting him, she thanked him softly. She didn't know it was a lie. By then, the group was already planning where to dump her body. Jomar, realizing how far things had gone, left the house. He would later become a key witness. The others carried out the final part of the plan. Investigators later confirmed that Aldis fired the first shot, followed by Ephraim. The gun had been brought beforehand, part of a plan that had clearly gone far beyond what anyone originally intended. While Julian was still being held in the house on Llano Street, Jared left briefly to go to a McDonald's on United Nations Avenue in Manila. At 2:03 a.m., he ordered 2 cheeseburger combo meals to go. When he got back, he gave one of the meals to Julian. Despite her weakened condition, she responded quietly, saying she would eat it later when she got home. According to a witness, the tension in the house intensified when one of the men accidentally used Jared's real name, Fernando, while inside the vehicle. Julian may have heard it. Even in her state, there was a chance she could remember. Jared feared that if she survived and recognized his voice, she could identify him. That fear sealed her fate. Around 5 in the morning, Julian's body was placed in a Mitsubishi Montero and driven away from Llano Street. The vehicle stopped briefly at 121 18th Avenue in Quezon City. The door was opened, and her body was pulled out and left in a roadside ditch. Her identity was confirmed later that same day. Worried that Julian hadn't come home after her plans with a friend, her family had already started searching. When news broke that a young woman's body had been found in a ditch that morning, her mother, Luce, and one of her brothers went to the morgue. The clothing matched what Julian had been wearing when she left home. Final confirmation came from her mother. It was her daughter. For the family, the news was devastating. Julian had never disappeared before. She always stayed in touch, even when spending the night elsewhere. This time, there had been total silence. Her family tried reaching Althea, but she didn't respond. At this point, police began connecting the victim to Althea and Jared. The day after Julian's body was discovered, investigators from the SIDG Criminal Investigation Unit started analyzing key evidence. One of their first moves was examining the McDonald's receipt found in the victim's hand. Using the timestamp to build a timeline, police obtained surveillance footage from the McDonald's on United Nations Avenue. The video clearly showed a tattooed man of average height placing a takeout order around 2 in the morning. His face was visible. Meanwhile, authorities were confirming details about the vehicle seen fleeing the scene. Witnesses had described a black SUV, likely a Mitsubishi Montero. 2 witnesses even recalled part of the license plate. Using this information, investigators traced the vehicle to a woman named Fernando Quiamco. A background check revealed that her son, Fernando Quiamco Jr., nicknamed Jared, was the primary driver. This discovery placed Jared at the center of the investigation. On November 9th, officers began watching the Quiamco family home. Though Jared wasn't seen the following day around 6 in the evening, police observed his father, Fernando Quiamco Jr., leaving the house. He was driving a black Toyota Innova and carrying a change of clothes. The vehicle headed northwest, and officers followed discreetly. About an hour later, it stopped in a remote area of Pampanga province, in a village called Upper Elate. Fernando Sr. entered a traditional Filipino hut where the Mitsubishi Montero registered to Jared's mother was parked nearby. Police moved in and entered the property, finding Jared and Althea inside. Neither resisted. No weapons were recovered, but their status as persons of interest, combined with the vehicle match, surveillance footage, and known connection to the victim, gave authorities enough grounds to take them into custody. A forensic team was called, and the suspects were brought to the station for questioning. Meanwhile, the SIDG unit launched a coordinated operation targeting the Salam Compound neighborhood, where Julian had been held. Around midnight on November 11th, police entered the residence used as a hideout. Armed individuals were present, and gunfire broke out. One suspect, Farhad Osman, nicknamed Bob, was fatally shot. Others were apprehended. Jilmer Wary and Jalen Pazarwillan were charged with illegal possession of firearms and brought in for further questioning. Initially, all suspects denied involvement, but as interrogation continued and pressure mounted, their stories began to shift. Jamor admitted being present in the house where Julian had been held and started cooperating with investigators. He explained that he had helped Jared out of loyalty. Jared often provided him and others with alcohol and financial support. He identified other individuals involved, including Efron, Talib, and Aldis. According to Jomar, Aldis acted on his own and was the one who escalated everything far beyond what anyone expected. Althea, interviewed separately, gave her own version. She admitted agreeing to lure Julianne to the location, but claimed she had no idea things would go that far. She insisted she thought it was only meant to scare her. Jared, meanwhile, stayed silent during questioning and argued that his arrest was invalid, claiming there was no evidence directly linking him to the crime. The investigation ultimately confirmed that 8 individuals were involved: Jared, Althea, Jomar, Jalen, Aldis, who was later killed, and Abdul. It became clear that the events weren't the result of a spontaneous dispute or emotional outburst, but part of a coordinated and premeditated operation that ended in tragedy. As more details came out, the case drew massive media attention, and the investigation intensified following the arrests. Althea Altarano agreed to speak with detectives, but she immediately went on the defensive. During questioning, she tried to portray herself as someone who had been manipulated and pressured by her boyfriend. She claimed Jared had threatened her before, and that she felt forced to go along with his plan. She said that after the abduction, she went into shock and didn't know how to respond, which she argued explained why she initially misled police and concealed the true sequence of events. She maintained that she had no knowledge of where Julianne was taken or what happened to her. However, Jomar provided a very different account that directly contradicted Althea's claims. He gave investigators a detailed breakdown of how the plan was organized, who was responsible for each part, and how the operation was executed. According to Jomar, it was Althea who told Jared Julianne's location and even came up with the cover story to lure her to the meeting. He also stated that she knew the SUV and the accomplices were already positioned along Macapagal Avenue, waiting for them. In the eyes of investigators, her actions showed that she had knowingly played an active role in the abduction. Shortly after, several suspects were arrested. Aldis and Efron went into hiding. Police were unable to capture them in time, and they were officially declared fugitives with nationwide bulletins issued. Jomar helped authorities create composite sketches, which were distributed to the public. Despite these efforts, both men remained at large, not only in 2012, but for years afterward, successfully evading justice. Meanwhile, the case took an unexpected turn involving one of the detainees, Jalen Willen. In January 2013, he was released on bail, though he still faced charges for illegal possession of firearms. Investigators lacked sufficient evidence to directly link him to the fatal assault or any physical violence. Just a few months after his release, on June 15th, a violent incident occurred at his home in Quezon City. During a family meal, an unknown assailant entered the property and shot Jalen, who died instantly. Neighbors later claimed that the shooter was known to local authorities, but no arrest was made. Jalen's wife refused to cooperate with police and signed a waiver formally blocking any investigation into the incident. As a result, the perpetrator was never brought to justice. For investigators, Jalen's death meant the loss of a potential witness. Although he had denied involvement in the events leading to Julianne's death, his exact role in planning the abduction was never fully clarified. With the family refusing to pursue charges, the case was officially closed. The public reacted with outrage, particularly since the attacker's identity had been confirmed. Existing laws prevented police from taking action without a formal complaint from the victim's family. By the summer of 2013, most of the individuals involved were either in custody or officially wanted. Althea continued to deny any responsibility, insisting she had no connection to Aldis or Efron. Yet witness testimony, the timeline of events, and verified evidence consistently contradicted her claim. By the time the investigation concluded, authorities had a clear picture of who made key decisions, who participated in the crime, and who remained at large. Nearly 12 years passed from Julianne's tragic death to the first sentencing in the case. For much of that time, the investigation remained stalled, and it wasn't until 2024 that a trial was finally scheduled for the central figures. Fernando Quiamco Jr., known as Jared, and Althea Altarano were the central figures in the trial. The initial court date set for July 12th was postponed 3 times. While the official reasons for the delays weren't disclosed, the victim's family felt the repeated rescheduling primarily benefited the accused. The trial finally began in September and lasted several months, examining witness statements, case files, surveillance footage, and text messages between the parties involved. Notably, the firearm used in the fatal incident was never recovered. Two of the suspected perpetrators, Efron Talib and Aldis, remained fugitives. At the conclusion of the trial, the court found Jared guilty of kidnapping, complicity in a violent crime, and involvement in aggressive behavior. Although there was no direct evidence linking him to pulling the trigger, the moment he gave the order to handle Julianne after realizing she had recognized him was considered decisive. The court interpreted this as evidence of intent to cause fatal harm. Jared was sentenced to life imprisonment, with a minimum term of 22 to 40 years, and was ordered to pay restitution to the victim's family of 500,000 Philippine pesos, roughly $8,400. Althea Altarano's verdict differed. Her actions were judged as participation in kidnapping. The court determined there was insufficient evidence to prove she had prior knowledge of the intent to inflict fatal harm or commit aggression. Prosecutors couldn't provide direct proof that she was present at the crime scene after the abduction or had contact with Aldis and Efron. Consequently, she was found guilty of a single charge, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. By the time the sentence was issued, Althea had already spent over 12 years in detention. The court ruled that her sentence was considered fully served and ordered her immediate release. Additionally, she was fined 100,000 pesos. The court didn't formally recognize Althea's role in initiating the plan, despite evidence that she had suggested teaching a lesson, arranged the meeting with Jared, and led Julianne to the location where she was abducted. The decision provoked a strong emotional reaction from Julianne's family. Her mother, Luce, along with several siblings, attended the sentencing hearing. One of her brothers, Alvin, publicly stated that forgiveness was impossible. The family subsequently filed an appeal with the Supreme Court seeking a reassessment of Althea's action. In their view, her role in the events wasn't secondary, it was central. She had initiated the conflict, involved Jared, and acted with a personal motive driving her decisions. Beyond the legal arguments, the case also raised unresolved ethical questions. Althea's exact motive was never fully determined. Prosecutors proposed two main theories. The first suggested professional jealousy in the highly competitive modeling industry, where the leak of personal information could damage a career, especially in a field heavily reliant on image and reputation. The second theory pointed to personal resentment and a desire for revenge. Julianne had clearly achieved greater success, receiving more high-profile shoots and growing in popularity. This shift upset the balance in their relationship. Althea no longer felt in control and, based on their message exchanges, had come to view Julianne more as a rival than a friend. That shift and the perceived loss of status may have been deeply humiliating for her. The most pressing question still lingering over the case is whether Althea could have foreseen the outcome. Legally, the answer was no, yet the sequence of events suggests otherwise. Althea was aware of the type of people she was involved in. She knew her partner had a history of aggressive behavior, actively set the events in motion, and then allowed control to fall into the hands of individuals willing to use force. The court's refusal to recognize this as a contributing factor left Julianne's family feeling betrayed by the justice system. The conclusion of the trial didn't mark the end of the story. Two key individuals involved in the crime remain at large, and Julianne's family continues to push for a full review of the case. Her mother declared that she would keep fighting for justice, calling Althea's release an insult to her daughter's memory. While the question of guilt has been settled, the pressing issue now is whether that guilt will ever be fully punished.